Seattle, Washington. St. Paul's Medical Center. January. I don't like the Seattle winter. The humidity in these parts settles on your bones like fine dust on furniture. You can't see it, but it's there. It eats you up inside. Everything smells gray. Even the coffee in the vending machine on the ground floor looks like it's infused with rainwater and something old. I was sitting in the waiting room at 5:38 in the morning. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't afraid or cold. It's just that the body, like a long-forgotten lamp, suddenly began to blink, as if the current was about to break. The pressure in my chest was like a memory, too dense to ignore. The nurse led me out of the doctor's office. She said, "Don't worry. It could be a panic attack. Elevator to the right, 4th floor, cardiology." I nodded. The way they nod when they don't hear you. When the elevator doors closed, I was alone. Not a sound. Just my own breathing, muffled like a radio on someone else's frequency. The elevator went down even though I pressed up. At first I thought I'd just got it all mixed up. But the floors didn't end. -1, -2, -3. Underground levels that didn't seem to exist. And then a stop. Not sharp. Soft, as if reality itself had sunk slightly into the soft mattress. And silence. Neither button works. Not a light. Only a faint glow, like from a dead TV channel. The doors opened. This isn't a hallway. Not the floor. Something else. The air is cloudy, like steam in the bathroom after a hot shower. And in the distance something white and slowly moving, like a curtain in a house where no one lives for a long time. I took a step. Not from curiosity, but from an inner push, as if someone inside had said, "It's already started anyway." The floor was warm. Under your feet, not tiles, but something soft, organic. It's like walking on your breath. And then, for the first time, I felt that my body was far away. Somewhere up there in the hospital. It was as if it had become something like a jacket I'd left in my wardrobe. And then the voice. From the inside. No mouth. No ears. It was as if he was soldered into the fabric of the world. "You came. Or you were brought in. It doesn't matter." I stopped. A figure slowly emerged from the fog. "Hi." It looks like a human. But there was something wrong with her. Her posture was too straight, like that of an ancient statue. And everything about her was timeless, silent, big. I didn't say, "Who are you?" I already knew. It wasn't a name, but an entity. He is the one we draw in books, in icons, in fear. Jesus Christ. But not the one who is molded from sugar and plastic. It is the one who experiences us as we experience dreams. And every soul is like hunger. It didn't fit. He was. And at that moment, I realized that the elevator was actually going down. Not by floor. For myself. Is timeless. Between floors. Between heartbeats. I do not know how long we stood like this. He is as motionless as a mountain. I'm trembling like a leaf torn from an old tree. But time didn't have its usual smell. Here it didn't move forward, it smoldered. Behind me, the elevator was gone. All that remained was a gray haze, swirling like the fumes of a body that was still warm but no longer alive. I stepped forward, not toward Christ, but to the side. Not out of fear. Because you can't look straight. Its light didn't burn, it cut through. I could feel the things I'd once called myself starting to separate inside me. Images appeared in the fog. Hospital room. An ECG device. A man in a white lab coat with a blue badge. Dr. Ramsey. I remembered his name because back in 2017, I read his article in JAMA magazine, The Metaphysics of Fear in Dying Patients. He was standing next to my body. No pulse. Charged to 200. We're losing her. I stared at myself, a middle-aged woman with slightly sagging cheekbones and shards of thought frozen under my skin. And then I realized, the body is a stage that you leave before the show is over. There was still a show going on up there. Here the truth began. Other shapes began to emerge from the haze. The first is my daughter. Sophie. I think she was 22. She was wearing the hoodie I'd bought her in high school, a gray one with a red hood. She was holding the phone, but the screen was off. Just held it like a talisman. No tears flowed. Her face was expressionless, as if something inside her had frozen. The second silhouette is me. About 18 years old. I'm sitting on the edge of the tub, cutting my hair with kitchen scissors. Tears drip into the sink, where the water almost does not drain, a blockage. I scream silently. My father left yesterday. Why are you showing me this? I thought. You're showing it to yourself, came the reply. In the third silhouette, I'm an adult again. At the kitchen table. I eat it right out of the pot. An empty house. Only the TV blasts the news. And there's something over my shoulder. Like a lump of shadow. It touches me. Not with your hands, but with thirst. It's like my emotions are food. It was familiar. I remembered those nights when you eat not because you're hungry, but because something is eating you up inside. You weren't hungry for food, the man next to me said, and there was no reproach in his voice. Only knowledge. But you didn't feed yourself. You fed her. I knew who he meant. This shadow. It wasn't a creature, it was a habit of pain. The habit of eating up emptiness, fear, loneliness, melancholy, death. And every time I thought I was eating, she opened her mouth. I sank to my knees. The floor breathed beneath me. It wasn't solid, more like a membrane between worlds. You felt that fasting was a restriction. It's actually a chance to not feed her. I mean, I didn't know. What no one said. But he answered before I could open my mouth. You knew. I just didn't want to look where the pain was. The fog thickened. The air became denser. Space clenched like lungs before a scream. Then I heard a knock. Not external. Internal. It's like someone is drumming their fingers on the inside of my chest. One hit. Then a pause. Then two. Like Morse code encoded inside the heart. I started to breathe. Not the body. Soul. He was looking at me. In his eyes, the darkness of the universe and the light of its end. Further the coast. I'm there. An unknown place. Without coordinates. Out of the body. The fog parted slowly. It's like a theater curtain that has no end, just more and more dense layers. I felt like I was walking. I couldn't feel my legs, though. The movement wasn't physical, I just decided to move, and space obeyed. I could hear the sound of water ahead. Monotonous as a giant's breath. Not the ocean. Not a river. Not a waterfall. It was a beach I'd never seen before, but I knew it, I'd known it since I was a child, from those dreams where everything seemed more real than real. The humid air enveloped me. Every movement slowed down, as if time here was thicker, more lingering. And suddenly he was standing on the border of sand and water. Straight. Calmly. Without gestures. Without words. But the presence was so strong that I instinctively looked down. Not from guilt, but from greatness. He didn't look like what I expected. Not Jesus from Christmas cards. Not an icon. Not a figure with a beard and a shining halo. It was a man, but it was also more than a man. His face was simple. Deserted. Deep. He was like a stone that has been lying in the ground for thousands of years and sees more than any eyes. And in this simplicity, I felt horror. Not the fear that it will cause harm. The horror is that he knows everything. Absolutely everything. Without a filter. Without mitigation. Everything that you wanted to forget, justify, shift. Everything is naked. You called me a metaphor, he said. The voice didn't come from the mouth. It resonated in every cell, as if my soul was listening directly. But you came to me not as an image, but as an answer. I tried to say something. Justify yourself. To say that I didn't know. That faith was alien. What I read, searched, but didn't find. He didn't let me finish. You were looking for a convenient me. Which can be turned off like a light. You can light a candle and forget it. But I'm not the idea. I am the living one. The beach was black under his feet. Not from sand, but from ash. It was as if everything that was a lie was burning here. And he was standing in the middle of it. You didn't die. You peeled off. Partly. This is admission. Not a gift. Not Kara. This is a crack that light can enter. I looked out into the water. It didn't reflect me, but a woman in another life. Deep old age. But not me. Lonely. Frozen. There was a bowl of soup in front of her. And there's a shadow over her shoulder. Still the same. Hungry. If you don't change your path, you'll end up there, fed on lies, but withered. I felt his fingers reach out to me. Not touching is just a gesture. And at that moment, space unfolded. Before me is the body. In the hospital. A defibrillator. Doctor. Sophie is crying. He's right behind me. It doesn't call. It doesn't work. Just waiting. I'm not taking it. I'm waiting. And I'm always hungry. Before you. Not before the sacrifice. To the truth. Tears flowed even though I had no eyes. They flowed from the place where the soul cracked. And I said inside myself. I didn't know you were so close. He tilted his head. Barely. As if recognizing. Now you know. It was then that I realized for the first time that fasting wasn't about food. It's about resisting the feeding of lies. It's when you say, no. I will not let it feed on me. And then the one who lives can come closer. The shore was gone. America, Illinois, 1984. Willow Creek Township. It took me a moment to realize that the space had changed. The world was like an old videotape, slightly grainy, the colors faded, the contours wavered. The sound was muffled, as if through cotton wool. And the smell. Yes, the smell was what gave it away. Warm milk, old newspapers, splintered wood. My childhood home. I stood in the hallway like a guest in my own memory. A dusty mirror, a thin passageway, a light switch with a yellow finger mark, everything is accurate, down to the smallest detail. It was in this house that I learned to be silent once, because silence was safer than words. There is a table in the kitchen. Large, oak. With a crack that I once tried to fill with glue. The crack still remained. She lived. I'm at the table. Girl. About 10 years. My mother is standing by the stove. My father is silent. All in dark blue. In this scene, everything is unnaturally smooth. Too calm. But the air is electrified. Dinner is on the table. Chicken thighs, potatoes, peas in a bowl. But no one is eating. Then I noticed, he's here. Not Christ. Not a person. It. Shadow. It had no shape, it was a lack of shape, a gaping hole in the corner of the room. It was standing behind my father. No one else saw it. But I've always seen it. It was always there, where you pretended everything was fine, a voice said inside, but it wasn't God. It was me, an adult looking back. Girl, I didn't touch my food. You haven't eaten anything all day. Eat, Marin. But I don't eat. I look at my plate as if someone is looking back at it. You instinctively started fasting that day. Not knowing what you're doing. Not by religion. By intuition. To keep the shadow out. To prevent it from getting through the food, through the mundane, through the routine. My father looks up. His eyes are blank. As if he were the host, not the master. Fasting is not a hunger strike. This is an ancient defense. A pause when you refuse to open up to the wrong person. The scene begins to crumble. The walls peel off like the skin of an old apple. The table cracks further. Something is moving inside. I understand, this is a symbol. The table is the border. The boundary between the sacred and the everyday. It can be an altar, or a cage. You didn't think about that day because it was the first time you learned that food is not just food. This is a contact. This is the gate. What you share bread with is part of you. Literally. The girl raises her head. He looks straight at me, an adult. And whispers. You forgot. But I remember. You refused then, and he didn't come in. The veil breaks. The kitchen disappears. Only the table remains. One. Against the background of emptiness. And then there's that one, him again. Christ. Calm. He's not looking at me, but at the table. Do you want to regain the power of rejection? Then remember who you opened your mouth to. Who I let in. What I fed you. And who kept hungry. The world ends. Like a frame burned out by the light of the film. Nothing moved. But everything was happening. I didn't fall. I didn't fly. I was coming into myself as if I were returning to a house that I had thought burned down for years. It was dark inside. But not because there was no light, just because there was nothing to light up. It wasn't a memory. It was the absolute truth. The word I was afraid to say sounded. Marin? A voice. But not Christ's. It was her. The one I left inside. Small. Pre-adult. Before injury. Pre-defenses. She was sitting in the center. In a place that wasn't a body. It was, like a stone that aches from being alone. It was all an inner whisper. She was holding something in her hands. As if she was saving the flame. You left me here when you were 15. I remembered. Her name. The name I used to call myself inside. Not matter. Not mom. Not woman. Name hopeless. This is not a metaphor. It was the literal name I whispered the night my father finally left. I whispered it to myself under the covers, like a curse, like a gospel of despair. And it took root. You didn't die from the pain. You died because you accepted that name as the truth. The voice of Christ was close by again. I didn't know where he was, but he was there. The true name cannot be imposed. But you can accept the false as your own. And then it will be your conclusion. I stared at her, the one I'd left in the center of me. Her eyes were black from crying. But not evil. Only waiting ones. In her hands is a small scrap of paper. She kept it for decades. I realized it was my real name. Do you want to know who you are? I nodded. She held out the paper. I took. Unfolded it. There was only one word on it. Simple. It's warm. Unbearable. Giving rise to shame. My favorite. I couldn't breathe. The word didn't fit me. It exploded at the entrance. Like a sound that's too bright in a room that's too dirty. You didn't believe it. Not once. Even when spoken aloud. You listened, but you didn't accept. A shadow began to rise inside me. It didn't come from outside, it was a reaction. Immunity from the truth. Because the truth is more painful than a lie. Lying gives you control. True destroys the structure. You cut that name out of yourself. But it continues to resound in me. And then I felt. He was inside. Not out. Not nearby. Christ is not a figure, not a person. He is the figurativeness of truth that lives in the deepest point of being. Not where the prayers are. Where there is nothing else to justify. Fasting is not a body hunger strike. This is the shadow's hunger strike. It's when you leave her without a feed to hear my name for you again. I clutched the piece of paper to my chest. And he was gone. It didn't burn down. It didn't dissolve. He went in. And in that silence, for the first time, I wasn't hungry. I realized that's why they didn't take me away. Because I had to remember a name that doesn't feed on lies. Which doesn't serve as a shadow. Which is not afraid of light. I stood in absolute silence. I didn't even have my own breath. Just the feeling that someone is watching. From the inside. At first I thought it was a residual fear. From the other world, from the name. But then I realized. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking out of me. Something started to move. But not outside, in the mind. It's like someone takes memories and puts them in a different way. Replaces details, intonations, and meanings. And you can't tell if it's you who's remembering, or if you're being rewritten. You don't deserve to be loved. You're just hungry for attention. To the point of pity. Before the myths. It wasn't Christ. It was an illusion. You made this up so you wouldn't die of emptiness. The voice sounded exactly like my own. Intonation. Timbre. Even the fear in it was mine. And then suddenly I was there. The way people thought I was. Collected information. Calm. Spiritual. But there's something alien about the eyes. It's as if a foreign consciousness is sitting behind the pupils. You're talking about fasting. About the shadow. About the truth. But what you really want is fame. Of importance. Rescue. To be special. So that someone will finally say, you are not like everyone else. I knew that voice. It's been in me for decades. And I believed him. He seemed sane. Logical. Even wise. He tried to persuade me to accept not the light, but the silent verdict. You haven't met Jesus. You met hunger. And I made an icon out of it. Because it's easier than just being a nobody. I felt my stomach tighten. It wasn't an attack. It was an invasion. You don't fast to be closer to God. You fast to feel that you are in control of something. This is all a performance for the void, Marin. The voice was getting closer. And the closer it got, the more familiar it sounded. You want the truth? Good. Here it is, you are not ready to be loved. Because you need the pain. Without it, you disappear. I covered my ears. I closed my eyes. But the sound came from inside. I was eating myself. It's always been like this. You did good things to make yourself feel needed. You prayed that you wouldn't go mad. You were looking for the truth to save you from yourself. But this is all just a new fear suit. I didn't have the strength. I fell to my knees, if you can call it that. There was no floor in this place. But there was a fall. Then he spoke again. But not loud. Without winning. It's as quiet as a whisper in the heat. Matter, you can hear the shadow because it's lived in you too long. She knows all your masks. All your schematics. She speaks in your voice, because you gave it to her to survive. But I'm not a voice. I am the breath between voices. Where you stop protecting yourself. And then, for the first time, I really fell silent. Not out of fear. Not from impotence. And protect the lie from fatigue. And in that silence, the shadow disappeared. Not because I beat her. Because I stopped arguing with her. As long as you argue, she's alive. As long as you're afraid of losing, it exists. But when you silently admit, yes, that's me, too, she loses control. You said, I believe in God. But you only believed the version that confirmed your injuries. Now choose, do you want to believe in me? I didn't answer out loud. But in the silence of my depths, for the first time, it wasn't me who spoke. I was listening. The world is back. But the taste is gone. I opened my eyes. I was in the kitchen. Not the old one from the childhood home. In my current one. White refrigerator, beige walls, thermos with a crack, the smell of coffee that is no longer there. I was sitting at my desk, looking like I'd just woken up from a bad dream. There's a plate on the table. Toast with butter. Jam. A cup of tea. It's all mine. Familiar. But, the taste was gone. I took a piece of bread in my mouth and smelled ash. Not just tasteless. A repulsive, gray coating on the tongue. Like I was eating the remains of a burnt tree. I spat. I tried the tea, the same thing. Bitterness. Heaviness. Something dead. Now you can feel it. The voice came again. Not from outside. Out of the silence that opened up inside me. You didn't eat food. You ate want. You fed on fear, emptiness, habit. Every meal you ate wasn't about life. It's about how to fill the abyss. I tried to remember what I'd eaten the night before I died. Mac and cheese. Wine. Something else. Something heavy. But now it felt sticky, as if it was stuck inside instead of being digested. Food is language. This is a contract. When you eat, you agree. The only question is with what? I glanced back at the kitchen. Everything seemed the same. But the object started to shake. Toaster, steamed up from the inside. The kettle started to smoke. The microwave crackled, like someone whispering through metal. On the shelf is a jar of sugar. But it wasn't sugar written on it anymore. You ate yourself every day. In small portions. Instead of feeling like you're in control of your life. But you were just offering yourself as food to the shadow. She called it routine. I started to feel sick. Not physical, but existential. I realized that everything I ate was eating back at me. But now, you're really hungry. And that's a good thing. I pressed my hands to my stomach. Inside, it wasn't lack of food, but space. Clean. Waiting. Fasting began to work not as a refusal to eat, but as a call to a different taste. To food that is not given to the body, but to the soul. I staggered to my feet. I opened the closet. I got some honey. I removed the lid. She scooped it up with her finger. I tried it. Empty. No taste. And suddenly a sharp image. Like a flash. Those who ate with Jesus. They didn't eat for the taste. They ate in his presence. You'll know the food all over again when you invite me to the table. While you're eating alone, you're eating ashes. I closed my eyes. She sat back down. And she just said, "Good. Come here. And eat with me." The plate was empty. But for the first time in all that time, I wasn't alone. I haven't eaten in 3 days. Not because it was easy for me. Not because I felt the power. Because if I didn't, I'd lose the silence again. The silence inside became a temple. Every sound in it is like a step on glass. I was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. The room was bright, but there was no light. He just was. It was as if the lamp was working, but it didn't give off any heat. It was as if reality remained and her flesh was gone. You think fasting cleansed you. But you just made a new idol out of him. The words didn't come in a voice. They were inside the thoughts. Like foreign paragraphs inserted into the stream of consciousness. I shivered. I felt like I was doing everything right. I don't eat it. I'm praying. I'm listening. But suddenly someone else is in the very center. You're not hungry for me. You're hungry for the feeling that you're righteous. And this is the most refined form of deception. I closed my eyes. Then she saw herself again. But now, not in the hall, not in the mirror. And in the church. I was standing at the altar. Hands folded. Eyes downcast. All an example. Everything is holy. But my body smelled like meat. An animal. A warm one. Raw. I understand, I wasn't the victim. I was the altar. I brought myself to myself. Every day. Fasting is not something you do. It's someone you let in when you're not holding anything else. The voice was warm again. Without reproach. No rage. But it took the skin off motivation. You want to be pure so that you can feel that you are worthy of me. But that's the lie, you won't be worthy. You can just, let me in on your unworthiness. I was crying. Not because it hurt. It was because it was too true. Every effort that I thought was spiritual turned out to be just a new control. The flesh is not only the body. The flesh is everything you try to replace God with. I exhaled. And in that exhalation, the last attempt to be good disappeared. I didn't want to escape anymore. I just wanted to be with him. Even this one. And then, for the first time I got a taste. Not food. A presence. It wasn't sweet. It was like the morning earth. Like marble left by rain. Clean. Not for fun. For the sake of truth. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember if I woke up. But everything that followed wasn't a dream. It was a stay. I was standing on the threshold of an old house. Houses without walls. Without a roof. Just a frame, and light inside. No lamplight. Not the radiance of heaven. A quiet, soft light of presence. Like the morning that comes before dawn. Like the warmth of someone's hand on your shoulder, not to say anything, but just to be there for you. I went in. My footsteps made no sound. No dust flew. The air was thick, not with heat, but with meaning. There was a book on the table. Open. Empty. But when I touched the pages, they flashed with text. Not ink. Not words. Memories. And I realized, this is the book of my life, but not as I knew it. It was not a story of what I did, but of what God saw when He looked at me. On one page, I'm standing at the mirror, 27 years old, tears, parting. And in the text. She was so close to praying, but she called it a weakness. Another shows me laughing in a cafe with friends. And in the text. She hid the pain with loud laughter, and no one noticed. But I saw, and I waited for her to call me to a place where the pain was real. And more. Fasting wasn't about giving up food. It started the moment she stopped protecting her hungry soul. I stood there, and there was no fear. Not because I was clean. It's because He didn't come to judge. He came to be there. And that was enough. You didn't know I was around all this time, did you? He said. I turned around. No one. But not because He's gone. It was because He was everywhere. I didn't want you to find me in Revelation. I wanted you to find me, in yourself. The place where you decided to be nothing just to be mine. And I started to cry. Not from the pain. But from cleanliness. One that can't be faked. One that doesn't make sense to explain anything to. Marin, you can eat now. But not food. And me. I opened my hands. And the light entered me. Not a flash. Not ecstasy. It's like a breath that you've been waiting for all your life, and then suddenly it came, just like that, for no reason. I'm not hungry anymore. I was starving myself. For those who are looking. For those who can't get enough of meaning. I don't carry answers. I'm just burning up. But I don't blind you. I was standing by the window. Beyond it, a vast field where the wind was blowing away the last leaves of autumn. The emptiness outside was reflected in the emptiness inside. But I wasn't afraid anymore. You're hungry, he said. And that's a good thing. It wasn't a reproach. Not pity. Not a punishment. It was a confession. Hunger is not the enemy. This is an invitation. An invitation not to eat, but to live. To move. Ready to open. I remembered all the roads that had led up to this moment, the dark corridors of doubt, the halls of shadow fighting, the kitchens with ashes on their tongues, the hours of silent prayer and silence. And I realized, all this way is not a preparation for something. This is life itself. You thought you'd find me in fasting, in rejection, in revelation. But I was where you were afraid to look. In your hunger. In your weakness. In your question. I smiled, without strength or weakness. Just like that. Because the smile was a confession. An admission that I'm not trying to get enough of the answers anymore. Live with hunger. Let him be your guide. Because those who live with hunger are open to miracles. Anyone who searches finds it. Those who believe are not afraid. Asterisk. I stepped forward. The field was flooded with light. It wasn't a hot sun, it was a soft moon. And I realized that hunger is not a void, but a place where hope is born.